Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast with the draft point guard. It's the Senator Phil Perry. Phil, hey, how are you?
What's up, TC? We're almost there. We're not quite there, but we're almost there as we're recording this.
Yeah, you know what? We threw up our hands when the Patriots traded back from 224 and 228 to 251 and 257. We said, you know what? F them picks. We're going to start podding because we're going to get Phil home to the family, and I might have a chance to go do some skills and drills before the sun goes down at the golf course, even in the rain. So let's get to it, Phil. You sent out a tweet that I thought really cut to the core of what this draft has been about for the Patriots, and that was comparing where the players the Patriots have selected to their quote-unquote big board rankings. Now, just to review, in the Bill Belichick era, you'd often find your Devin McCourty's, your Logan Mankins, maybe even your Matt Lights to a degree, but a lot of guys who were seemingly overdrafted worked out awesome. In the last few years, didn't work out as well with your Jordan Richards, your Tyquan Thorntons, your Cole Stranges,
Duke
right?
Dawson's.
Duke Dawson's. But in this instance, the Patriots drafted for value over and over and over again. And Phil tweeted out the place where these players were picked and their big board ranking, meaning where all the consensus mock drafts had them slotted. Will Campbell was selected at 4. Big board had him at 4. Travion Henderson selected at 38. The big board had him at 37. So basically right on time, one pick value. Kyle Williams, wide out. Patriots took him at 69. Big board said 74. So a little early, but still in the same ballpark. Jared Wilson, developmental center, Dancing Bear out of Georgia. He was taking 95. That was a little late. The big board said he was going to be coming off at 80, so the Patriots got value. Craig Woodson, Phil and I will talk about him because I think it's the one pick that I'll go, he's a safety out of Cal. Patriots took him at 106. Big board said 188. Josh Farmer. This is a great one. The next two are the biggest value picks on the board. Phil's going to go in depth on these guys. Josh Farmer, defensive tackle from
Florida State.
Right. Forgot. He was taken at 137. The big board said you should take him at 86, man. And then Braden Swinson, LSU edge guy, 13 and a half sacks last year. He went at 146. Big board said, got to take him at 71. I mean, he's basically a second round value. Patriots added a kicker. His big board ranking was 433. But that's a kicker. Marcus Bryant. The best I could do on him, Phil, was I found a big board ranking of 238, but I don't even know if that's accurate. I had to do a lot of digging, and there was an NBC Sports thing. They took Marcus Bryant, a tackle from Missouri, at 220. Big board said 238, but I also saw something that had him way down. That was a hard thing to discern.
Yeah, he, according to Dane Brugler, was the 36th tackle in this year's class and graded out as a priority free agent. So that, I guess you'd say, quote unquote, reach, but it's a 7th round.
7th round pick with vine-like arms. They might try and do some, Area 51 work between him and Will Campbell. All right. So value, Phil.
Yeah, I just feel as though, Tom and I said as part of that tweet, this feels like the most straightforward, logical draft the Patriots have had in a long time.
Since 2021, which was kind of logical.
Where you had Mac Jones and you had Christian Barmore. Ramondre Stevenson was a really good value. He fell a little bit. He had I think a marijuana situation where he either got suspended for a bowl game or benched for a bowl game. Right. So you're right. It's probably since then that you could go as deep as we've gone in this year's draft class where the picks make this much sense. And to me, the plan, obviously, through the first 2 days was to help Drake May. And they let him know that. It was pretty apparent, I know, to people in the building that they were going to attack the offensive side of the ball. They did that clearly, and I think they did it really effectively with their first 4 picks. Then they dipped back into the defensive side, and they got what I felt were good values, aside from that one pick that you mentioned as well. And we could talk about Craig Woodson in a bit if you want. But, Tom, I feel almost uncomfortable giving the grades that I've been giving because we're asked to give these immediate grades, and it's great for social content, and it's it's very rare, I'm sure, that any of these end up being accurate. Although if you go back to the 2022 draft class, you're going to find that that was a pretty ugly one, and we called that one in real time. But I feel uncomfortable, Tom, almost because of the great marks that I'm handing out here. It leaves me almost unsettled.
Here's
But
the
I
thing.
think that's how I have to. That I'm calling it like I see it. I think they're having a great draft.
Well, anyone who's going to say, well, you're just grading them that way because they ended up being Patriots, has to look at what we were talking about prior to. And on Thursday night before the draft started, and again on Friday night, we talked about, and we talked for weeks about Will Campbell, but we talked before the draft about the value of Travion Henderson among the running back class. We talked about Kyle Williams. Certainly we'll talk about him in relation to Jalen Noel all the way through their careers. But we talked about Jared Wilson. We talked about the center position as being something that needed to be shorn up. And Phil mentioned Jared Wilson as being a guy. He was one of the best centers there. Farmer, we talked about the defensive tackle spot because of Barmore needing to be shored up. We talked about edge with Swinson as an area that needed to be shored up. And we also talked about the kicker, which they got with Andres Borregales.
Borregales.
Yeah,
Borregales.
that's what I said. Yeah, I said that. Andres B. So we talked in advance about these positions being filled, and then the positions that they chose to fill, even when we said, well, what else can they do? Where else can they go? They actually hit those spots, and they hit them with value picks in terms of they drafted guys who should have been gone by the time that they got there. Phil, I said several times leading into this draft that they needed a 1995 style draft, 2000, 2001 style draft, a 2009, 2010 style draft where you're adding multiple players that you can build with. We've got Christian Gonzalez that we've seen come in and Drake May that we've seen come in. And there's others, I'm just escaping me, but they're trying to build their core. I think they have a real good chance to have added to their core with Campbell, Henderson, and certainly Kyle Williams. And I think, I don't want to get over my skis. Campbell and Henderson, at least. I don't want to get too far down the road with Kyle Williams yet.
And I get that, but I think you're right. And I would comp this one to 2009. 2009 they didn't even have a first round pick, so maybe it's a tough comparison there, and it's not apples to apples. But some of those drafts, Tom, that you mentioned, I mean, what made those draft classes great? 95, you drafted 2 Hall of Famers. You got Curtis Martin and Ty Law. In 2000, you got Richard Seymour, and you got Matt Light in the second round. Or no, Matt Light was second round in 2001, I believe.
Yep, Seymour was also
Seymour was also 2001.
But they got the greatest player of all time the year before.
Right.
So it's
yeah. So you kind of meld those together, but that 01 draft was, the high end talent you got was fantastic. In 2010, you got Rob Gronkowski, Pro Football Hall of Famer, and Devin McCourty, Patriots Hall of Famer. Like, boy, the high end talent was great there. I don't know if you're going to get that kind of high end talent in this year's class, but I think you're getting starters. You're getting like if you can get 4 starters in a draft class, that's a home run draft class to me. And I look at Will Campbell. I look at Jared Wilson for sure at center. I look at Travion Henderson, who, is he going to be quote unquote a starter? Elliot Wolf called him a 3-down player. I think he's more of a complementary player, but it's such a pass heavy game. He's going to get starter workload, I think, in some ways. So, those three names for sure. And then I think between Kyle Williams or Braden Swinson, who I know I'm talking to coaches right now who really like that guy, or Joshua Farmer, like you're going to get people that are going to contribute a lot of, I think, meaningful snaps to your team. So if you can get that from one draft class, that to me is a big deal for this team.
You get them in with the right coaching, the right culture. Ryan Cowden spoke to the media today, Phil, and he made the comment, first knees bent, head on a swivel is how they had to operate in this draft, but also that they really did emphasize the whole culture fits. Do you think that is something that they made hay on? Because they're trying to change everything. Like with Bill, they were mopey, they were miserable, they were poorly coached by a skeleton crew. There was too much rancor. And then last year it was like, unfortunately, felt like almost a substitute teacher vibe. Unfortunately for Gerard and really for the rest of the coaching staff, which was thrown together. They have a real chance now, I think, to have structure that hasn't existed in the way that you would want. And they have the right guys to embrace that structure, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm just looking at the picks overall. Will Campbell, captain. Travion Henderson, captain. Jared Wilson, just a 1-year starter, but he's um, an early declare, 21 years old, playing center and playing at a really high level for a Georgia team. Like that speaks to me at that position, especially. You've got to be vocal. You've got to be smart. Like I think he has real leadership traits, even though he's a really young player. Craig Woodson's a captain. That's probably one of his most redeeming qualities. You keep going down the line, and I think they got the types of people that they want for the most part, especially with those high end picks. Even Kyle Williams, I don't think he was a captain at Washington State, but I know you mentioned last night during our on the clock special that it sounds like, by all accounts, that he was really, really well liked in that Washington program. I've talked to coaches who say, this guy's got some bleep to him now. Like
now, because every coach or scout is going to toss a now in at the end.
He's got some bleep to him now. Like, he's got a little edge to him, and so he might not be the Eagle Scout that some of these other guys seem to project to be in that regard, but still a likable guy for the teams that he's been on.
Let's run through the roster fits for each guy, just for the hell of it. Say who's ahead of them, what likelihood we would see them this early. And just to quickly note too, as I think about that, as we talk roster fits, sometimes we have to go into our little mental our memory banks and see who's in different spots. You don't want to forget a Christian Ellis or somebody. And as I'm about to say, Christian Ellis popped into my head. He's a linebacker. No linebackers added. No linebackers added. So that was just a stray thought that hit my head, and it's gone now. Let's get back to what we're talking about. Let's look at those positional rooms. No linebackers or cornerbacks added. I embrace a draft that doesn't have linebackers or cornerbacks drafted, because I don't like breaking down linebackers and cornerbacks.
I thought we might get, I just very briefly as a tangent to that, I thought we might get a couple of those types of guys, because I do think this new kickoff rule has coaches kind of scrambling to make sure they're covered for it. And usually to make sure that you have the coverage people for that kind of play, you're drafting fast linebackers and fast defensive backs to make sure that you can handle these things. That Craig Woodson certainly falls into that category, almost 500 snaps on special teams during his career at Cal. But they really didn't get any other sort of like core, obviously the kicker, but they didn't get like core special teamers.
Yeah. See, I think that's why I don't like the linebackers and corners, because once they start coming in round 4, we end up talking about their special teams relevance. I'm like, kick cover and mother scratcher. Okay, let's talk about those roster fits. Will Campbell, it's a disaster if he's not your starting left tackle. Phil agrees. Travion Henderson, he should be a guy who is able to have the football in his hands on a 5-touch or more basis from the beginning of the season. And by the end of the year, be a guy who's occasionally seeing a 10 to 15 touch game here and there. Phil, thoughts?
Agreed. He should be, his usage should rival what James White got during James White's prime.
Okay, prime. Okay, because Jimmy White, he'll be a good guy to get this week on the pod, Phil, to talk about Travion, because Jim White was a full apprentice year. And as Gerard Mayo said about 2014 James White, he was poop. He was not ready for the rigors, but he was a smart son of a gun and very strong in the lower body, and he improved drastically. But so Travion Henderson filling to, Burkheadian or James Whiteian type role really quickly would be terrific.
You could see him, Tom, in a particular game, even in his rookie year. You could see him having like an 8-catch, 85-yard kind of game, which obviously provide huge value.
Kyle Williams, jury's way out right now on what his fit will be, because he does seem more developmental than Noel or Higgins would have been. Higgins was off the board when the Patriots selected. He's obviously got upside as a blazer down the field who can just run right past people. We're going to talk about him some more, but he's a guy I have more trepidation about, because as we spoke about him last night, Albert was stressing the fact that, hey, in the geometry of dealing with a player like that, you have to respect him with your safety because he's just so fast. And we nod, and I say, boy, the Patriots haven't had a guy like that since, Tyquan Thornton. Okay. I'm not saying it's going to be Tyquan Thornton, who was supposed to be a 5th-round pick. The Patriots took him in the 2nd round. Kyle Williams is a hell of a player. He's not a mouse. No, I shouldn't say that. I didn't know Taekwon was a mouse or not. But he didn't play good. And he was not so slightly built as Taekwon, who broke every time he hit the ground.
Well,
But
that's the thing. That to me is the key difference. Like, you can't just be fast in order to threaten safeties. You've got to be good.
right. Thank you.
And to me, I think he's good enough to be able to do that relatively early in his career. I think he plays so fast that there will be coaches who have their eye on him when he's on the field, and all it takes is a couple. You hit on a couple of those early in the season, and suddenly you get a little bit more respect. I had one AFC coordinator reach out to me. His team was in the market for receiver help, and he said about Kyle Williams, he's a stud. Very good release quickness and can make plays with the ball in his hands, plays fast. I liked him. To me, he is a unique sort of, this is me talking now. He's a unique sort of profile, Tom, because I do think he's a little raw in terms of his route running. And I know Brian Hoyer, when he was breaking down Williams' game to us, he looked at him as basically a true X and nothing else. Like in Josh McDaniels' offense, usually you want these versatile guys you can move around.
And that's a boundary guy, just for everyone to, that's an outside the numbers boundary guy, which usually you're trying to find somebody who's 6'1", 6'2" or more. Kyle Williams isn't that, but he's so friggin' fast.
Yeah, often isolated on one side of the formation on the line of scrimmage. So not, maybe not your give it to him on a jet sweep kind of guy and use him in the slot. But a vertical threat for sure. The release quickness, I think, is a real thing. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. He has the ability to create separation very early in a given play. And he did, Tom, he was among the league leaders in the country when it came to yards after the catch per reception. So I think he's a deep threat. I think you can throw it to him short and see what he can do after the catch. He has real juice, though. They clearly tried to get much more explosive with both Henderson and Williams. Both those guys are your quote unquote home run hitters. They can score anytime they have the ball.
Phil, you had another comp for Kyle Williams that came down the line.
Yeah, I mean, this one was courtesy of Steve Smith, who does a great job. He breaks down receiver play with our buddy James Palmer for the Underdog Network. And his comp for Kyle Williams was Steve Smith. He said this is the next version of 89 in the league. He said that about Jamar Chase back in the day, and now he's saying it about Kyle Williams. I don't think he's saying that he's going to be a Jamar Chaseian kind of player, or even that he's going to have the production that Steve Smith had, but he just Kyle Williams reminds Steve Smith of himself. I think in terms of the attitude and the edge. He's an Inglewood, California guy. He is tough. He's not going to take any bleep from anybody, but also the athleticism with the ball in his hands. I mean, we remember Steve Smith. I mean, he was
my favorite player.
So dynamic, so fun to watch.
And he was that right out of the chutes as a punt returner too. So we'll see about that. I had a thought, and it was this. The days of the Patriots looking at rookie wide receivers who come in and don't get the program necessarily should be over. And I look at last year's too, and I put a lot on them and the wide receiver coach, Tyler Hughes, and the whole system that was going on. So I'm going to take them out of it. But if Josh has to go meet Kyle Williams halfway and get him on the field to do these things, you can't give these guys the Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas treatment that they were given in 2022, or the Tom Brady. I ain't throwing to that guy. He doesn't know where he's going. You're spending real resources on these guys. You can't you're not a good enough team to shred Taylor Price and Aaron Dobson level picks, second and third round picks, and say, yep, don't know where he's going. Sorry. We'll skip on to the next one.
Can I ask you a question, Tom? Because I find this part of it interesting as we're talking about the roster fit, right? I thought they might go with Jalen Knoll because I knew they had coaches in the building who liked him. And Jalen Knoll, to me, is a slot receiver. He has 4.39 speed, so you can send him deep if you want to, but he's a slot. Who's the true slot on this team now? And by the way, Brian Hoyer, thank God we have him, because he taught me something. I've only been covering this team for about 15 years now. Taught me something that I have been getting wrong for the last decade and a half. When we talk about the X's and O's of the offense, the Z position in the Patriots offense is the slot guy. Everywhere else in the NFL, the Z is the guy who can play outside and in, who you send in motion, who does a little bit of everything. Everywhere else in the NFL, that's your Z. In New England, your true slot is your Z, and the guy who does a little bit of everything is your F. So I've been getting that wrong. So just for anybody out there that wants to know how the Patriots, label these different positions, your Z is your Danny Amendola, your Troy Brown, your Julian Edelman
Your
slot.
slot. Okay, but
Who is that? Sorry, go ahead.
When Edelman and Amendola were on the field together, generally Amendola was the slot.
Yes.
And Edelman was the outside-ish guy.
And I think it probably depended on what they were trying to do. Like if it was a run play, they'd probably rather have Edelman inside than Amendola because he was just thicker and he could hold up and he could crack an end occasionally and take their head off, when they weren't looking. So,
I just wonder what the relevance is of Demario Douglas going forward.
So that's my point. Who's their slot? Because Kyle Williams, if he's more of an X and Jalen Noel was the slot, okay, does that mean they've got big plans for Demario Douglas because he's the number one Z, aka
I know that Josh loves
offense now.
In conversations I would have, in the last year or so with McDaniels when he wasn't coaching, and we would talk a little bit about the Patriots here and there, not on a regular basis. But I mentioned he's nice if they got Douglas the ball more often, and he kind of agreed that would be something that would be productive because I've felt and said prior to last year he should be seeing the ball 110 times, not 110 catches, but over the course of between targets and carries, the ball should go in his direction 110 times, which isn't insane by any stretch. If you're going to be an 85 catch receiver, you're going to see the ball 120 times coming in your direction. So anyway,
it's interesting. So long story short, if you're a Pop Douglas fan out there, this Kyle Williams pick might actually be good news for you. Maybe they see him as the third guy, the slot guy in a 3-receiver offense. And then you look at Bourne and Diggs as sort of those quote unquote F players that you can use in a bunch of different ways.
Was Kyle Williams the kid who was also a quarterback coming up?
He was a high school quarterback. Yeah. And he transitioned.
There you go.
Yep. He
there
transitioned.
You go. You got your Edelman. That'll be interesting to find out if it has any relevance. Let's skip on down. Jarrett Wilson. He's going to fit in behind Garrett Bradbury, who's a center. Free agent. He was cut right by the Vikings, then the Patriots picked him up. So Correct. He's a veteran. He's in there and played a lot of snaps, but he's not there for the long haul, one would think. So Jarrett Wilson then becomes the dancing bear behind him. There's a lot to like about him. Be great if he was able to get on the field a little bit in his rookie year, Phil.
This is my favorite pick in the draft for the Patriots. This is when, talk about those grades that have been given out. This is the one flat A that I gave. I just feel like where they got him, the value that he could provide for the long-term future. His athletic profile is so off the charts. He had a 9.84 relative athletic score. That's out of 10. It's really hard to do. He ran a 4.8 40 at 6'3", 310 pounds. I mean, this guy's an alien, Tom. And again, he's really young. He's 21 years old. So he's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger. He's going to adapt and learn the pro game. I think he's probably a little unrefined in terms of his technical skill set. Like
you're unrefined.
David Andrews probably had a little bit more in terms of ready to go NFL savvy by the time he left Georgia versus Jarrett Wilson. David Andrews had been there a while and Jarrett Wilson only started 1 year. But I think he's got everything they need to be the long-term option at center. And I wonder, Tom, if they wouldn't play him at left guard, if they're still looking for a left guard while Garrett Bradbury holds it down in 2025 at the center spot.
He had taken snaps there, so that actually has a lot of upside. Just keep running those guys in. Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson, Cole Strange, Jarrett Wilson, Garrett Bradbury. Just there should be enough humans there. And come on in, City. Yep, we'll give you a rep.
Hey, maybe try Caden Wallace at on the interior. Try him at guard. People thought, I think, coming out of the draft that he might be a guard last year. So he might be worthy of a shot there too.
Josh Farmer, defensive tackle. People like him. Quick, it looks like. Interior quickness is very good. Pursues well. Had a good season. I just started looking at that guy because, as you're watching the draft, you're looking at best availables, and he sat there for a long time at the head of the best availables before the Patriots grabbed him.
Mm-hmm. And he's one of these guys that, this doesn't always happen. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't happen covering the Patriots, but we put together our best fits at every position every single year. We put a lot of work into those pieces, and he was near the top of best fits for interior defensive linemen. He's still there on day 3. So
classic 3 technique. I'm just looking back real quick at Brugler. Mm-hmm. Classic 3 technique, 73rd rated player. They traded up, the Patriots did, just a smidge to get him. he actually had a heartbreaking parental situation. His father, Greg, passed away when Farmer was 2 years old after a stomach surgery. And then his mother passed away when Josh was 11 from a brain aneurysm. And he has 6 older siblings. So an easy kid to root for, Phil.
No question. No question. And, it is interesting. One thing that I didn't know about him prior to the draft was that maybe he has an injury situation. He did miss some time due to injury, but I think it was thumb related, which you don't think of as, necessarily career threatening. But the way Daniel Jeremiah, who we know is so tapped in, given his experience in the league as a scout and front office person, he was talking about Joshua Farmer as somebody that the league had concerns about his long-term durability. It's sort of almost as if people in the league were labeling him kind of a one contract guy. So you take him and, is he going to get to that second contract for you? Is he? And Jeremiah's point was, well, first of all, we don't know. Second of all, at this point in the draft, if he can give you 3-4 good years before whatever the issue is, he didn't specify what the medical issue might be, but if he can give you that on his first contract, where they took him on day 3, that's really good value. And Tom, to me, he fits what Vrabel wants because he's violent. He is one of these violent guys. That's how you would describe him in terms of his style of play. He's relentless. He's quick. He has really long arms, which I think helps him kind of get into some bigger bodies. He's 6'3", 312, so he's not a small guy. But, you get some guards in the NFL now that are 6'6", 325, so his effort and his energy inside and the violence with his hands that he plays with, to me, could make him an impact player right away.
All right, LSU's Braden Swinson comes up next. Great value with him as he was rated 71st on the big board that Phil and I have referenced a few times. He comes in 146. He'll be behind Harold Landry and Keon White. He is a defensive end. He's a little thinner, right, Phil? Or a stand-up guy on the edge. He's going to get a little more swole, as he said in our conference call with him. He also is very close with Will Campbell. So it sounds like, at least, for shits and giggles, at least we have that to talk about.
Yeah, 6'4", 255. So he's not tiny. He breaks that 250 threshold, which seems to be about average for these guys that are going to play on the edge of your defense. But I think there are questions about, has he got enough sand in his pants to hold up on first and second down, Tom? He's got almost 34-inch arms, though, 33 and a half inches basically on the arm. And I think that's what scouts really liked. I talked to one outside linebackers coach who said he's got some length and he's got traits. Really good pick by the Patriots for where they got him. So this is a guy who was, thought to be basically a third-round pick. He's second-team All-SEC at 8.5 sacks at LSU last year, going against some really good offensive linemen. Like, usually that plays in the NFL, and usually that gets drafted a little earlier, but maybe teams just see him as sort of a sub-rusher right now. But for this team, Mike Vrabel there and what he's done with young pass rushers in places like Houston in the past, you give him a guy like this who has some traits, as this coach told me, and maybe he turns into something that people weren't anticipating.
All right. The kicker is the kicker. You got to figure a drafted kicker is the guy who has the inside track to win the job. Marcus Bryant will be a developmental tackle. We are at pick number. Patriots are like 3 picks away, so we'll be able to get you those picks when they pop.
What do you think of the kicker, Tom? Do you like the idea?
I don't like a Miami kicker in New England.
A rookie from Miami? Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Why not?
Well, the weather, the climate's far different up here. I've been down to Miami. I've been to Florida, South Florida even, and you'd be surprised how warm it can be down there as opposed to up here. Up here in Massachusetts, it's more of a northeastern climate. But when you get down there, you go past, say, even Maryland, it starts to get much warmer. And then when you get down into Florida, Florida's a big state. So sometimes you'll be up around Jacksonville and it's not that, you're like, hey, this is manageable. But you get further down, especially inland, and Miami's not inland. When you get further down into Miami, especially down there, you're basically level with the Bahamas. I mean, you're 25 miles from Cuba. You can basically hit it with a well-struck 3-wood. So to me, that's hot. And that's not New England, Phil. So that's why it's different. Miami's different from New England. Just want to go through that for you.
You're being a real dick right now. You know that? The reason I ask, that was great, by the way. And you're not wrong. I thought Ryan Cowden made a good point where he said, Nick Folk, he played here, right? Did a pretty good job here. I think he went to Arizona. So,
Did he?
It is possible. Yeah. It is possible I believe he lives in Texas, but I think maybe he grew up in California. I should know more about Nick Folk. He was great while he was here.
Yeah, there's nothing similar, Ryan Cowden, between Florida and Arizona. You got a nice dry heat out there. Okay, it's basically kicking in a dryer.
But he's not. He wasn't kicking in the snow. Was Cowden's point? He
why,
wasn't. Kicking
why was
in
Nick
New England
Folk
weather.
kicking here? Ryan Cowden and Phil Perry. Why was he kicking here? Because he got released all over the friggin' league until he landed here. He was like 35 years old when he started kicking here.
But he was.
And
good.
I was a big time Nick Folk guy when people wanted him out of town early on. But there's a level of composure you need that a 30-plus-year-old kicker is going to develop, and he embraced that. He'd seen a thing or two by the time he got here. I think he kicked for the Jets before he got here. Am I wrong?
That's true. No, you're not wrong.
All right, thanks.
I think that's what they think Borregales can be in terms of his demeanor. Just talking to people who've worked with him, who've seen him before, met with him during this process. He does seem like a very even keel guy. He was very consistent at Miami for 4 years. So he didn't have these, this was not a roller coaster ride, which maybe that means nothing at the college level. I couldn't tell you if Chad Ryland was the most consistent guy in the world before he got to the Patriots and was not. So who knows? With a kicker,
he went out to Arizona. He's the best kicker in the league. See, you see, there's your difference between Arizona and New England.
It's gonna be fun to watch. I gave the pick a B- because I don't love the
they
idea
needed a kicker,
but you can get him in undrafted free agency. Like, where do they get Adam Vinatieri from? They got him from freaking Europe. Like, you can
Ryan
find
Fire,
those guys.
I think
You can find those guys, generally speaking. And I actually thought they should have signed Matt Gay, who's available. He's a free agent. He's an accomplished guy in the NFL. That would be kind of your Nick Folk type of kicker to bring into New England. But instead they bring in a rookie, and I think if you draft him, he's
I got no problem with it.
Got to get the job. You got to.
I got no problem with it. But if he's sitting over there on the sidelines, looking like the Michelin Man with 37 parkas on in late November on a 41-degree day, I'm gonna be a little bit looking askance at the guy when he comes trotting out to kick, and he's got oven mitts on in October.
John Sewer and Drain Cleaning is the name to know when the drains don't flow. Leave your drain pain to the experts. John Sewer is on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They do the dirty jobs so you don't have to. Visit their website today at johnsewer.com. John Sewer, they get the job done.
What's the pick that made you wince, Phil?
Yeah, the one that I have with the lowest grade is Craig Woodson. Number one, you mentioned the big board rankings. He does seem like a guy that people expected to be around much later in the draft. And, talking about, guys like Dane Brugler and people that are really in on this stuff, and these day three guys especially. But I also look at him. He's one of these guys we were talking earlier about, defensive backs and linebackers on day three. Usually those are your special teamers, and you don't really want to talk about those guys. I think that's who this is. I think Craig Woodson is going to be a core 4 special teamer. He played 450 special team snaps at Cal. I think he could contribute defensively. It looks like he's been a versatile guy. He did a really good job in the slot at Cal. I tweeted something earlier about his NFL quarterback rating allowed when targeted in the slot was among the best in the country last year. So he could be a promising player, but he's a 6-year in college kind of guy, Tom. I think he's going to be 25 when the season starts or thereabouts. So he's probably relatively tapped out in terms of his ceiling and what he's going to be physically. So I just didn't love that pick given some of the other things that were on the board. Like, they got a tackle later in the 7th round, and so good for them. Like, invest in premium positions late, but they probably could have gotten a tackle that, maybe is the swing guy this year and maybe is your future right tackle next year. With that pick in the 4th round, there were some guys on the board that I kind of liked at that position. So it's all about opportunity cost and what are you passing up in order to add a guy like that. So that's why I gave that pick a C.
Yeah, and the pick that made me wince. Again, I love wide receivers. I love fast wide receivers. I love playmakers. I love tough players. Who can take hits and bounce back. Patriots believe pick is in. Pick is in. We don't have it.
Okay.
At 251, Patriots are about to put
this is exciting. 251. Let's do it live.
We're going to come to you live. Okay, mission control. But you see Kyle Williams, and when you look at the profile of smaller hands, suffers from some concentration drops, needs some polish. I have a little PTSD with receivers here. So when I see projects, I don't necessarily immediately, and he's not a project. When I see that there's work to be done, I have rarely seen here in New England over my 30 years covering the team, the work adequately done to put the polish on the receivers. But he was a quarterback in high school, and I've seen many, many high school quarterbacks have great relevance when the Patriots get here. This is how Phil sits, for those of you watching on YouTube, and a pic's about to come down. Eyebrows furrowed, one finger against pursed lips.
Braden Swinson, more intel coming in from NFL people, sub-rusher, rotational backup. But hey, maybe he turns into
Who's
more.
Jarvis Green?
Oh boy, Jarvis Green was a little bigger, wasn't he? Was he at 300?
Yeah, he had
Jarvis
sand in his
Green?
pants. No question about his pants and the amount of sand in them. Skipping on down as we wait for the pick, and we'll go back to that. What's your favorite pick?
My favorite pick was
Your
Jared
MFP?
Wilson. I gave Jared Wilson the best grade. I think the most exciting pick was Travion Henderson. And Tom,
Agreed.
I actually want to ask you about that one because there was some interesting intel we got from Elliot Wolf late on Friday night, where he said, this was kind of our first disagreement as a personnel staff, and as a not even personnel staff, but coaching staff / personnel staff, where they were really debating who they would take at 38 overall at the top of the second round. And then one of the two players they were debating, not Travion Henderson, obviously, went off before they were able to take him. So the discussion was kind of moot, but it sounded like it was a good exercise for these guys to go through as they heard each other out and tried to figure out what to do at 38. My guess is, this is just a guess, this is not informed. It's half informed because I know they liked this guy coming into the draft. My guess is it was Iowa State receiver Jaden Higgins, who went to the Texans a few picks before the Patriots picked at 38. Obviously,
the Patriots took a Bill Belichick memorial pick. They have long snapper Julian Ashby from Vanderbilt. Bill was born when his coach, when his father Steve was a coach at Vanderbilt. Takes a long snapper, and his name is Julian. So there's a lot of ties back to Bill Belichick with the pick 251. It's Julian Ashby. Bad news for Joe Cardona. Bad news for Joe Cardona. Can't be drafted.
We're drafting long snappers now.
So good. We can plow right ahead with what we were talking about.
Tom, hold on. That requires a reaction.
I just had mine.
Drafting a long snapper, to me, is kind of absurd. Long snappers you can for sure get as undrafted free agents. There wasn't anybody else. There was no one else on the board, and I don't want to get worked up about a 7th round pick, but that just out of principle, I feel like is something we've got to quibble with. You got Joe Huber just sitting around from Wisconsin. He's among the best available right now. Played for Luke Fickell, one of Mike Vrabel's best friends in coaching. Give you a little interior offensive line depth. Eugene Asante, a special teams linebacker, but somebody who might project to be able to play a little bit more. Holland Pierce from Rutgers, massive offensive tackle. You could even go with a slot receiver if you really want to. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but Xavier Restrepo, incredibly productive at Miami, ran a 4.8. Who cares? You're not sending him down the field anyway. Out of principle, I feel like I've got to disagree with this pick. Sorry. That's all. Long snappers in the draft. Come on.
You know what? It's another sign that Vrabel's turning the page. He's getting all Bill's guys out of here. Later, Cardona.
You're not taking a long snapper and then he's not making the team, right? This guy's making the team. Is this the end? It's got to be the end of the Joe Cardona era. Does it not?
And Joe Cardona went to Mike Vrabel's press conference.
As did David Andrews. How'd that work out for him?
It's like a mafia thing. Hey, welcome in. Hey.
Nothing against Julian Ashby, by the way.
Julian Ashby. I had him
for him and his family.
On our big board, we had J Ash way up. Phil. Okay, favorite pick. Yeah, well, so we were talking about who they would have been squabbling about. Jaden Higgins is what, 6'4"?
4.
Yeah. Big and definitely an X.
He actually is interesting. This is why
Whatever I say about some of these players, I know that I'm wrong. And Phil, in a very diplomatic way, is going to say, actually.
Well, you were there when Brian Hoyer broke down his game and said one of the reasons I really like this guy is because they used him inside and out. You could play him in the slot. He can do catch and run stuff. He can do the contested catch thing. You could use him in the red zone. He's got great hands. So he was a versatile guy. And again, he's going to a Patriots adjacent team in Houston. Nick Caley's the offensive coordinator now, obviously from New England, a couple stops ago for him. Nick Caserio, obviously. So that's my guess, is that was the argument there. And I wonder which side wanted Travion Henderson more. Do you think that was the Mike Vrabel, Cam Williams, Ohio State contingent inside the building, or was that the Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh side of things?
I don't know. I wonder how the factions break down. Do they break down along tribal lines every time? Or does Ryan Cowden sometimes find himself in agreement with Elliott and Josh McDaniels? And which I took a long look at the Patriots war room when they had a shot of it up. I don't think I saw any coaches in there.
I don't think I did either. I
personnel
tried to
people.
do the same
saw
thing.
Some of the Patriots.com staff. I saw Jonathan. I saw Robert. But I didn't see that. So the Patriots will be up in just a few. They missed out on Zeke, Zeek Biggers, Detroit, defensive tackle from Georgia Tech. He went 37, of course, to the Dolphins. So we'll have to deal with Zeke. Phil, favorite pick, least. What? I'm looking at my outline. I got a lot of balls.
I'm still just laughing at the long snapper pick. That is a very Bill pick. That was very Belichickian of them.
He's from Vanderbilt. I love that he's from Vanderbilt, which is, folks, if you are Bill Belichick aficionados and experts, you know that he was born in 1951 in Vanderbilt, Tennessee.
How about this?
What?
How about this? Julian Ashby. So he's 6'1", 221. That's smaller than Cardona.
Was he in the Air Force?
No, he played at Furman. So, which I believe is isn't Furman like a small liberal arts school in South Carolina or something? I'll have to look that up. But
I know they used to have a good baseball team.
4 seasons at Furman before going to Vanderbilt for 1 year. Accurate and gets good zip on his snaps. Pretty nice little write-up here.
They better all get good zip on their snaps if they're going to the NFL to throw it between their legs. Okay, Houston's on the clock. Imagine that. Sometimes throws knuckleballs and sinkers. As a nasty sweeper. What the fuck? They all better have zip. All right, we're getting slap happy.
Oh God.
Shedeur Sanders is off the board, Phil, finally.
Shedeur Sanders is off the board. You think the Patriots should take a quarterback? They have the Mr. Irrelevant pick, which you mentioned. Should they take a quarterback in this draft, Tom? You should first of all, definitely.
I want to talk about Shedeur for a second.
Definitely take a quarterback over a long snapper every time.
Yeah, I think so too. Because right now, what's your depth chart?
It's Josh Downs behind.
That's it. Yeah, you need another
Downs.
kid. They're going to have to take one in the
Josh Dobbs. Josh Downs is a receiver for the Colts.
They're going to have to take one as an undrafted free agent. But Shedeur Sanders dropping until Cleveland rescues him in the 4th round or 5th round.
I believe it was the 5th round.
Yeah, because it was just scrolling. I'm just sitting there watching it. I just knew that they took him. I was happy to see how happy Shedeur Sanders was when he was drafted. He immediately started dancing around with his brother Shiloh. But by that time, they were in a living room. Like 6 people. Sounded like 600 when he got drafted. But they were happy as hell and they were dancing around. But it was quite a comeuppance from the massive gala that was going on Thursday night to now they can dance in the living room and almost step on the Pekingese dog under their feet. But to me, as you pointed out Friday night, he was undraftable in the 3rd, 4th, and ultimately the 5th. When you look at the Cleveland Browns' reaction, their brain trust just went. You don't want that guy to be your 3rd developmental quarterback. I mean, the self-importance that was exhibited throughout, he was skipped at the top basically because he wasn't that good. I invite you to look at every interception that Shedeur Sanders threw in 2024. I sent Phil the clip of it. They're mind-numbing picks. They're horrible picks. They're weak-arm picks. They're picks in his own red zone and in the opposition's red zone over and over again on horrible throws. Now, we didn't have a lot of them, and you've heard Mel Kiper rave about how accurate he was, but he's accurate because he took a shit ton of sacks. So he was skipped early because he wasn't that good, and he was skipped late because he's a little too much. And everyone, I think, thought that because it was Dion and he's been able to stage manage the entire career of his son, which to a degree you celebrate the involvement. And then on the other hand, too, you say you got to be able to fly on your own, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Bronny James. And the draft and the NFL spoke and said he doesn't get to skip the line just because his dad happens to be the greatest cornerback of all time. You know, we're not going to get bullied into taking this kid when he acts as if we should be privileged to have him in the building. So I think that the NFL, which is built of men who have given blood, sweat, tears, time, divorces, marriages, relationships with kids up to coach these kids, when someone walks in and says, I'm here, give me everything. Give me your number, LT. Cam Ward down in Tennessee wanting Warren Moon's number, and he gives it to him. Moon does, and Cam Ward said, yeah, I did a little research. It looks like he was pretty good. Get out of here. So these guys want to skip the line. And you look at other circumstances too, Phil, and I know I'm babbling here, but like I had a long time to think about this. Why the Steelers skip them? What do you want, Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur Sanders in the same friggin' room? So there's a reason he went that far. He's not that great.
But it's beyond.
suck.
But it's beyond the play. Like
It got beyond the play. It got to
play.
Dion, and then now like we can't have him.
Have you ever seen a drop like that one though? Like where, again, reputable, respected analysts, scouts turned analysts have this guy in the top 20 of their quote unquote big boards. Even Mel Kiper. I think people laugh at Mel Kiper because he could be a caricature of himself at times. I love Mel Kiper. He comes on the Next Pats podcast. He's an incredibly kind and generous guy when it comes to sharing himself and his time. He had him as his top quarterback in the draft. And again, he is a character, but he talks to NFL people. He knows
what he's talking about. But why does Albert say that he couldn't find anybody who viewed him as a first round prospect? And Albert talks to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm not doubting Mel and the people he talks to, nor Field Yates, nor anybody, but Mel planted his flag there. I think a lot of what Mel is saying too, though, is Mel, to his credit, and I believe this in my heart of hearts, just because you're wearing sweatpants and going to work in a t-shirt and you have a clicker in your hand for 12 hours a day doesn't mean that you're more able to discern what a good player is than somebody who doesn't do the job but knows the NFL and watched a shit ton of football. There's a point at which there's diminishing returns. The level of being able to tell a good player, you either can or you can't. I think over the course of time, I can tell when someone's pretty good. Does that mean I'm a scout? Would you hire me? No, I can't tell you all kinds of shit, but I can tell if somebody can play. And I think that Mel thinks that, or Mel has a background that allows him to say, I know what I'm talking about. Patriots are on the clock. Thank you, Adam.
How about that?
So Mel is doing his own analysis. And he said that. He said they've been getting quarterbacks wrong for 50 years in the NFL. So Mel thinks he knows better. So that's part of it. But he might be proven right. And maybe Shedeur Sanders is a terrific prospect.
He's not that wrong about the quarterback evaluation thing. I mean,
no, they suck.
It's obviously been a pretty rocky.
But there are
endeavor.
Players who get drafted really highly because teams need them. There were teams that needed a quarterback this year, said, not that guy, not taking that guy. And why not take that guy? Because some of his decision-making is horrible. He does not have a strong and electric arm. He's not that fast. He constantly drifts and opens up before he throws. And he brings an absolute ton with him in terms of entitlement and the pressure. So that's why he ends up sitting on the board longer than he ought to have. And if his name wasn't Sanders, he probably would have gone in the 5th round anyway. And, just anyway. At least he handled it well, and it looks like he's happy to be going where he's going.
If his name wasn't Sanders, he probably wouldn't have a lot of this stuff that has seemingly turned teams off, and maybe he would have been drafted sooner.
Yeah, but if his name wasn't Sanders, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to have a nest built for him at an HBCU, and then another nest built for him at Colorado. And
that
all
might be true, but he wasn't. Again, Tom, he was not that bad. He's not an undraftable player talent wise.
No, so I didn't say he was undraftable, but he's
however he got his opportunity. However he got his opportunity, and he turned it into a draftable quarterback, like a day.
Why didn't he go to Ohio State? Why wasn't he? Why didn't he go to Ohio State or Michigan or LSU? What?
No, you're 100% right. But he did. He was a more than serviceable college quarterback. So again, we all find our opportunities in different ways. His was kind of obvious in terms of how he got it, but what he turned into was a draftable quarterback. In my
Absolutely, a draftable quarterback,
right?
Like Quinn Ewers or Will Howard, and again,
I think he's good players. Than that, and the reason that he got drafted as late as he did is because he's a pain in the ass. Like I think we should
absolutely. Once it got past Friday night, probably once it got to the 3rd round, it was the pain in the ass factor.
We got a pick for the New England Patriots.
What do you got? Quarterback.
Kobe Minor, cornerback out of Memphis. Kobe Minor. So there you go. You're probably talking about a special teams guy. This is, I'm just pulling up the beast here because I have not heard of Kobe before. Kobe Minor is the 127th cornerback in this year's class, according to Dane Brugler. 5'11", 188 pounds, ran a 4.56. That's not great at the cornerback position. So there you go. 9 reps on the bench press. We'll have to dig into his history a little bit more because on the face of it, he does not satisfy just take athletes really late in the draft and see if you can turn them into something. He's not, just by how he tested, he doesn't look like an electric athlete. So maybe he has some other qualities to bring to the table that warrant a draft pick here. It's very clear they treated the 7th round like, just as a way to jump the line on undrafted free agents. Like
any chance he's related to Harold Miner?
Baby Jordan?
Yeah. I think that's an NER.
There's always really?
NER.
Oh, okay. This guy's OR, and Kobe is with 2 E's. So
not related to Kobe Bryant either.
Probably
spelling on both.
Probably not. But there you go. That's your Patriots draft. I've got to grade these picks right now. I think I'm giving the long snapper grade a D. Like he'll probably play for them, which is, hey, that's probably better than most 7th round picks, right? But that's almost an out of principle thing. I'm sure he's a fine young man, and I honestly don't know what to give this cornerback in the 7th round because I have never heard of him until.
Just find one guy somewhere that they should have taken instead and given an F.
There's a tackle, a former 5-star recruit, and a lot of times those guys, kind of almost coast in the NFL off their 5-star ranking because they're just such freak athletes as young kids. But Logan Brown is a tackle out of Kansas who was not drafted. The guy I mentioned earlier, Joe Huber, was a walk-on at Cincinnati, transferred to Wisconsin when Fickle went to Wisconsin. Seems like a pretty versatile and capable player. He went undrafted. Jake Majors played a ton of football for Texas as a center.
I could stop right now and turn off mine, and you could turn off yours, Adam, and he would still be here. I would just keep going. You're right. Nick Nash is the receiver out of San Jose State, former quarterback. He's still around. Marcus Yarns, don't call me Marcus Yams because that R and the N, when they're typed together, it looks like an M, and I always want to call him Marcus Yams, the running back out of Delaware. He's undrafted. Cam Horsley, a violent defensive lineman out of BC, he's undrafted. Willie Lampkin, the short guard who's 5'11", 290, but kind of dominated at the Senior Bowl. Folks.
Just a really impressive dude. Period. Like I'd play him at fullback. Willie Lampkin went undrafted, and they drafted a long snapper over Willie Lampkin. I can't have it.